What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home over at fakepigskin.com. Hey, y'all, the gang's back together. We got a whole crew in the house with the Thanksgiving holiday kind of throwing a wrench in our normal schedule. We got all the guys together. We're going to kind of do some Thursday night slate stuff on this episode. We'll go for a little bit, and then we'll cut it off. We'll pick up and have a separate pod for you guys that are, focusing, guys and gals focusing on the Sunday night games. With me tonight from Parts Unknown, it's Rod and the Mad Dog McCleese. What's up, Mad Dog?
It's good to be back. I mean, this is crazy that we're heading into week 12. I mean, this is the stretch run right here. You're either, bracing for the playoff run, or you're playing DFS and you giving up on your teams because they're in the cellar. So yeah, one side or the other, or maybe you're in the middle. You're still kind of clinging to any hope that you have to get in the playoffs, maybe as a last seed or something like that.
Yeah, or you're an idiot who gets too cute and starts Austin Hooper over Delaney Walker and misses the playoffs by 4 points, and Delaney Walker scored 12 points. So that would be me. I'm an idiot. That's what I do. Sometimes I get a little too aggressive. Damian Dabrowski, what's up with you?
So get a hold of this. I actually took last Friday and this Monday off. It's a little 4-day weekend and did absolutely zero drinking. So normally in such a scenario, you would not.
Do we need to do a wellness check on you? What's going on?
I will have to see how the show goes. Generally, coming off circumstances like that, I'm probably running at like 35%. But Thanksgiving slate, 2 slates this week, you got to be at 100%. So I'm all in. We'll see if that actually means anything, or if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but only one way to find out, right?
I think you realize that as you get older, you can't binge drink like you used to, and I know Wednesday night is a popular drinking night for many people, so I think you were prepping yourself, doing the
I needed the
proper preparation. I know you got your Pedialyte shipped in. I know you'll be fully functioning and 100% ready to go for the big Wednesday night affair.
Yeah, 4 days of hydration and extra sleep just to prep for tomorrow night. So we'll see what happens next week.
Damien, you're old when you start doing that weekend warrior shit where you just don't even think about drinking during the weekdays. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, when you had time off work and you still didn't drink, I don't know, man. Like Kyle said, maybe we need to have you checked out. But yeah, hopefully all is well.
Yeah, the other way to look at it is maybe it's like it's easy enough to drink without taking time off work, apparently. So I didn't feel the urge to overcompensate, but TBD on the effect. I'll report back.
So I wanted to get your guys' opinion. So are you staying around for Thanksgiving, and kind of what's your general consensus, Damien? Are you a big Thanksgiving person? Do you think it's overrated? Where are you at?
Well, I don't try. I rarely travel on Thanksgiving. I hate unless you can get out, a couple days ahead of time and not come back till after the weekend. Yeah. It's just a disaster. So I generally stay away from that. Obviously it's not always up to you, depending on kind of what your family situation is and stuff. But no, I love Thanksgiving. I'm not. There's a lot of it's for what I always find pretty weird is that every year at Thanksgiving, I'll have a couple things obviously you have the classic foods and stuff, but things like cornbread or pecan pie that I just absolutely love, but I have literally once a year on Thanksgiving, and I've never been able to figure out why I'm just incapable of actually just getting those items at any other point of the year. So that's going to be something I'm going to try to work on this year and see if I can actually, post Thanksgiving still continue to keep those wonderful items in my diet. But I just think, it's cool. You get a whole holiday really just based around food. You get a whole slate of games on a Thursday. If you're fortunate enough to have Friday off work or can take it off, it turns into a nice 4-day weekend. Yep. And you generally get to see a lot of people that you probably don't get to see on a regular basis, be it family or even friends that are back home for the holidays and stuff like that. So it's definitely up there in terms of my favorite holidays.
Yeah, it is definitely one of those weekends where a lot of people find their way back into town and kind of can socialize and see those people you don't get to see as much. Ronald, what is your Thanksgiving must-have? What is the one thing that you can't have Thanksgiving without? Is it a side? Is it what is it?
It's got to be the stuffing for me. Also, since my mom is part German, the sauerkraut too. Kind of, I miss that every year when I don't get to go home, or actually Thanksgiving came a couple weeks early for me because my parents came to visit a couple weekends ago, and then because they're going to be traveling for Thanksgiving, I typically do go visit them, and it's nice this year because I don't have to travel, like Damien said, deal with the traffic and just rat race that is everyone trying to get out of the city and get somewhere, anywhere, for that matter. But I will have my sister and brother-in-law and my nephews visiting instead. So, yeah, the 3 Rugrats running around, including mine. So it's going to be, 3 boys just tearing my house apart. I don't know how much football I'm going to be watching, but I can guarantee you that I will have a few drinks to kind of lessen the blow of 3 just crazy kids running around. So
yeah, for sure. It'll help to have an extra few sets of hands. Hopefully you can get in front of that TV for a little bit. I think stuffing is probably my go-to. Are you an in the bird stuffing, or are you outside the bird stuffing?
Oh, for me, it's in the bird, for sure.
And I think it's in the bird, it's stuffing. If it's outside the bird, it's dressing, which weird people down south do. Damien, what is your what is your go-to Thanksgiving side?
I actually have a pretty limited arsenal of Thanksgiving foods, partly affected by the fact that I just don't eat any vegetables. At any point.
So you don't eat any sort of potato?
A potato's a starch, so there's a workaround there. So I'm all in on potatoes, but it's potatoes, turkey. I can do the fake bread stuffing that's pretty much just bread. I can do that, but other than that, it's just that's actually pretty much it. Maybe throw in some pie for dessert and some cornbread, and
cranberry
I'm good
sauce?
to go. No, unless it's like a cranberry vodka or something, what am I putting cranberry on my food for? That seems unnecessary.
Stay away from the cranberry.
Very, very basic.
Oh yeah, pumpkin spice everything.
No pumpkin.
Pie. What kind of pie do you eat, Ron?
What kind of pie or pod? I was like, oh god!
Don't
keep it to your right here.
Don't tell me you eat that pumpkin trash.
I'm a pecan pie guy. That's definitely my go-to. I'm with Damien there, and I probably don't eat it that often, so I definitely like it. Prefer it to be like the homemade type. And I guess if pumpkin pie's around, I'll have a slice, but it's not like if I miss it, I'm not really, my feelings aren't hurt.
Yeah, give me apple pie all day, and I'll be very happy. Okay, guys, we should probably talk about this slate. There's 3 games. Let's start with the first game. Obviously, the Vikings are traveling to Detroit to take on those Lions. I guess from the Vikings' perspective, I think Adam Thielen obviously has been a beast and, is challenging for, among the league's best fantasy wide receivers, which is not something a lot of people saw coming in. For the big question with the Vikings, Damien, is Latavius Murray – he had a big game a week ago against a really good Rams defense that had been much better against the run. Now he's out on the road against this Lions defense. Do you expect him to kind of keep up what he had last week, or is this more of a McKinnon game, or do you think the pass maybe has to take over? Where are you at with the Vikings offense?
Despite still not really buying Murray, buying in the sense that I still don't think he's a particularly good football player right now, but he has looked better in the past couple of weeks, I think. There's been some talk that the ankle was holding him back earlier in the season, and after the bye week, he kind of healed up. But the thing to take away here is he's getting the touches. I think it's 5 straight weeks with 15 or more. And initially, even though we knew he was going to be the goal line back, I don't think I don't think our hopes were as high for this Minnesota offense as they've kind of turned out to be here. And they're at a point where they're just moving the ball well enough and getting enough red zone chances that Murray doesn't necessarily need to have great efficiency to contribut. He can still give you 18 for 65 and be okay because there's a decent chance he's going to get a touchdown in there. Might even get 2. He's not going to get the passes, so it's in PPR. It's still, you're going to have to factor that in. But there's not enough running backs that you can consistently count on. For between 14 and 18 touches every week now, and he's one of them, and he's on a good offense. So I'm totally comfortable playing him here. I think depending on how game flow goes, we'll see how much McKinnon gets. But he's out of the 2. He's been the more reliable guy in terms of consistent workload the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm in a 16-team league, and he's been one of my saviors at running back. It's really deep, and it's been hard to find usable guys, and he's been amazing. The Lions' defense is sixth, allowing the sixth most fantasy points this season, including 169 yards and 2 touchdowns last week to Chicago, 144 and a touchdown. The week before, they've allowed 20 fantasy points or more 3 weeks in a row. They got torched, obviously, by New Orleans, who's been awesome. Carolina, Atlanta ran all over them. Ron, this seems like a good spot for Murray to kind of not be super, you know, in terms of yards per carry amazing, but he should get enough work where he'll put up the numbers and hopefully fall in the end zone.
Yeah, I mean, you said end zone. That kind of pretty much sums it all up. I mean, Damian's right. He is getting the work. He's getting the carries. He double jig carries. He's not helping you in the passing game, but obviously with Jerick McKinnon there, that's obviously not a need for him to play in that phase of the game. So, you know, McKinnon has also been serviceable. I mean, especially in PPR league, 7 targets last week. He caught 5 of them, but only for 12 yards. So I think as long as he's still getting targets, he's still a guy that I still do trust. And I think you can pretty much throw both these guys out there. Again, it's Murray's more that high volume. If he gets that high volume or 15 carries or more, which he has been getting, I don't see any way you could sit him. Having said that, again, it's a little more touchdown dependent or as far as his value. So for his floor, I would kind of agree his floor might be a little bit higher, a little safer, but the ceiling's a lot lower. And as far as Jerick McKinnon, I mean, this guy's due for, you know, a big game or a big passing play where he takes it to the house. So I like both these guys, but I will say the Lions defense is definitely underrated. They can make some big plays. They can definitely bring some pressure off the edge. And then you get the secondary, which is, you know, definitely improved, vastly improved. So, but again, it sets up for a decent matchup for the Vikings, especially for this backfield, the situation that is, you know, post Dalvin Cook injury.
Yeah. Do you expect Darius Slay to stay on one side of the field, maybe, or is he going to go, you know, maybe be on Adam Thielen, and this could be a big Stephon Diggs game?
Yeah, I would guess that they would probably move him around. I don't think that he's going to stay on one side, even though he is the closest thing they have to shut down a corner, and he's done very well. I mean, even back when they play with the Falcons earlier in the season at home, I don't think he was, you know, blanket coverage Julio the whole game. So they kind of moved him around, and Julio's a much more physical receiver than Stephon Diggs is. But yeah, I mean, these two receivers have been really great. I mean, Thielen has been, you know, a guy that I think a lot of us underrated, and I'll put myself in that same group. Preseason, maybe a lot of us thought what he did last year was kind of flukish, but I mean, he's really, you know, impressed, and he continues to produce even with Case Keenum under center. So I think both these guys are good, solid plays in this matchup, which could possibly, even though these defenses are pretty decent, could turn into a shootout on Thanksgiving. So I don't know. I mean, maybe Damian would disagree with me, but I think from the DFS side of it, I would probably want to have a lot of exposure to this game, you know, kind of on both sides, because I think it could, you know, turn out to be a high-paced, you know, high-octane type performance by both these offenses out there.
You know, Stafford's been historically very good on Thanksgiving, which I think gives me some confidence in the Lions there. Just, you know, having this game every year, having it at home, I think there's something that goes into just having that rhythm, kind of being familiar with the preparation. For the Vikings guys, I would much prefer Thielen to Diggs. I think the Thielen plays enough in the slot that he's going to avoid Slay, which means that whether he's on one side or moving around, Slay is going to spend a lot more time on Diggs. So I'm not really too interested in him. I think, I mean, you know, if you're playing only the Thanksgiving slate, you really only have a few receivers to choose from, so you can't completely cross them off. But Thielen's pretty much a must-play for me here, whereas Diggs is a guy I'm generally avoiding.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I kind of like them both. But I kind of see where you're coming from. On the other side of the ball, so the last time these two teams played, Golden Tate had 3 catches for 29 yards. Xavier Rhodes shadowed Marvin Jones on 26 of 30 snaps, and Marvin Jones only caught 1 for 38. do you think maybe we get a Kenny Galladay game, or do you think the Lions' offense has evolved and this is probably a game where Golden Tate, improves much on his stat line from the first matchup, Damian?
I would definitely take Tate over Jones in this matchup, just because I think it's fairly likely that we see Rhodes shadow Jones again. And because most of his targets are so far down the field, if he catches them, he's going to get you production, but the success rate on those passes is obviously a little bit lower than it is for Tate, who's doing so much of his work around the line of scrimmage. I think he's going to bounce back after getting kind of taken out last week, which wasn't, totally surprising given Vic Fangio's record with the Bears there against Tate when they faced the Lions. So I think they're going to make a point to get him involved. I definitely think Galladay is an interesting call. If you're playing some GPPs, his snap count this past week, he played 35 snaps after only playing 11 in his first game back. So, he outsnapped TJ Jones. It looks like he's kind of firmly their number 3 guy now. So definitely a big play option. And with Jones locked up on Rhodes, I think if they're going to be going downfield, it's going to be to Galladay. So I'm definitely with you on that call, but I think Tate is going to bounce back and be a pretty safe play here.
Ron, let's talk about Amir Abdullah. This is a guy who's scored in 3 straight weeks, which is great for fantasy owners, but he also only had 35 total yards last week, and the touchdown came via the pass. He had 52 yards against Cleveland, he had 48 yards on 21 carries versus Green Bay. Is Abdullah a guy you feel comfortable starting in this tough matchup just because of the hot streak he's on, or is he a guy that, despite what he's been doing the past couple weeks, you look at those yardage totals and he's not a guy you can comfortably start?
Yeah, the problem with Abdullah, which is always the problem, is not knowing whether or not he's going to get goal line carries or be involved once they get into the red zone. That's kind of been the whole drag to owning him, not only owning him and starting him, and consistency obviously hasn't been there all year long. But I think you pretty much got to ride the hot hand right now, especially with all the injuries we've seen at the running back position. Last week was not a good game at all for him against the Bears. 11 carries, 22 yards. That's just not going to get it done. So, again, this is a matchup against, a pretty stout Vikings front line, and I could definitely see him having some problems with them. I would say in the majority of leagues, unless you're really deep at running back, you pretty much have to start him and hope for the best, and obviously hope that he's involved in the passing game. But, yeah, we need to see some improvement, as far as running it between the tackles when he does get those carries and those opportunities there. So only 2 targets last week. That was, again, they need to get the ball to him a little bit more, let him create some space and see what happens. But, yeah, again, I'm not that optimistic about the matchup. But, again, given the injuries, I think you're probably playing him and putting him in your lineup and hoping for the best.
Is there any other nuggets from this game you guys want to hit on before we move to Dallas and San Diego?
I think that covers it pretty much.
Okay, let's talk about those Cowboys who, without Tyron Smith, have looked absolutely atrocious. It looked like they could figure a little bit out against Dallas or against the Eagles, and then that game quickly snowballed. Damian, if Tyron Smith can't play again this week, should we severely downgrade all of our Cowboys?
Yeah, fire up that Chargers defense again. Look, the first week it was Dak just didn't have a chance with what Claiborne was doing to Chaz Green there. But this week, they had a whole week to prep for it, and it really wasn't much better. It wasn't that he was so much under pressure. He just, he looked terrible. Easily, his worst game as a pro, but I don't, I guess if Smith does come back, maybe this offense does suddenly just look like what they have, for the majority of the season. But I think it's more than that. It's obviously Zeke not being in there. Morris has actually ran the ball well, but I just think that teams don't respect him the same way they obviously did Zeke, especially from kind of a big play potential where, they're not worried about him breaking off a 60-yard run or, really being a factor in the passing game at all, which Zeke was. So it kind of telegraphs what they're doing. I think last week Morris carried the ball on 70% of his snaps. So, I mean, when he's in there, they're running it. And the other thing is their passing game. I mean, Des Bryant has just not looked. I don't know if it's
Can we talk about Des for a second? Des and Julio Jones. I know these guys have been guys that we've always rode for, that have always been high draft picks, that have helped people win fantasy championships, but just like they look like they're fine receivers. They're guys that you can use every single week, but they're not guys that can win you weeks, that can put up huge numbers, and are guys that we should be targeting super high anymore.
I think there's a pretty big distinction between the two of them, though, because I mean, Julio Jones, if you actually watch him play, still looks completely uncoverable. I mean, he makes plays that, there's maybe two other receivers in the league that can make. The issue with him has just always been the touchdowns. They don't use him in the red zone, but I mean, he can put up, he had a 300-yard game last year. Des Bryant's the complete opposite. I mean, he's getting you 55 yards every week. I mean, I'd be shocked if when was the last time Des had a 150-yard game? It's just that's not what he does, and he doesn't look explosive. He's not getting any separation. They look like completely different players. I believe I saw a stat on Twitter today that said Des had the basically the biggest difference between his expected fantasy points and his actual fantasy points, which means he's essentially been the least efficient player in the NFL in terms of the opportunities he's seeing. And if you've watched him play these past couple of weeks, that's not surprising. So I don't think he's a wide receiver one anymore. I think all you can hope for is that if the Cowboys keep ending up in these situations where they're chasing points, that he gets volume. But I don't really feel great about using anybody on Dallas in this game.
Yeah, I mean, even when he's getting quote unquote volume, like he hasn't topped 100 yards once this season. He's only topped 75 yards once. He has 4 total touchdowns. So, he was a guy that could get you double digit, close to 15 touchdowns. And that was a guy, I'll take those touchdowns each and every week. Ron, you're the Des defender. Do you want to come to his aid, or do you think he's kind of evolving into a wide receiver too that's fine, but not a guy that we should be just, going all over, getting super excited, going crazy about?
Oh, I feel like you guys are beating Dez up pretty bad. I feel like I should be wearing my Dez jersey tonight. No, I mean, I will agree with Damian. The production's not been there. If you look at the targets, and that's probably what he's getting at with that tweet. And I don't know, maybe it is a little bit of what he said as far as the separation. It doesn't help, obviously, losing Zeke. And, now with the offensive line in shambles, that doesn't help matters. And, Alfred Morris is just Alfred Morris, 2 or 3 yards in a cloud of dust. To me, yeah, he ran okay last week, but he doesn't, scare opposing defenses. So I think when they can kind of key in on Des Bryant, and knowing that outside of Des Bryant and Jason Witten, who else is there really that's going to beat you in that passing game? So I think that doesn't help him. And then also, he has had some tough matchups. I'm not making excuses for him, but I think we kind of brought that up, preseason. I think, Kyle, we were kind of having that debate, and you brought up how I think Dynasty Frank was the one that brought it up about his numbers against the top corners out there in the league. And, I think there's might be something to that. But having said that, this particular matchup, I think that we may see Dez have one of his better games. I think he's a guy that typically performs well in primetime games. I think, again, it's going to be a lot of what Damian said with this game. There could be a lot of scoring. I don't think either one of these defenses, the Chargers have been a lot better. I do worry about Bosa coming off the edge and just frustrating Dak. But
even if Tyron Smith is back, you have not completely healthy Tyron Smith going against Bosa, against Melvin Ingram, against Denzel Perriman.
Yeah, Melvin Ingram.
It could be a lot of parties in the backfield and a lot of a real rough day for Dak. Would you guys
just one other thing, though, he has had, come to his defense, he had last week 14 targets, only 8 receptions. Yeah, not great. The week before, 8 targets against Atlanta, caught 4, and then the week before against Kansas City, 11 targets, 6 receptions. So, yeah, I can see what Damian's saying, but, the targets are there. You're looking at a guy that's going to get double-digit targets. The question is whether or not he's going to make the most of those and be able to, break a big play. That's kind of been his he's been one of the best receivers after the catch for years, and I think that this year we haven't seen that. So I mean, that's the one alarming thing.
He's basically Ted Ginn. He's going to catch half of his targets, and hopefully you get a big play out of him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that he's a wide receiver one. I can still say I like Des Bryant, but he's not been a wide receiver one this year.
Would you guys start Phillip Rivers in this matchup over Dak Prescott?
Yep.
Wow, Damian's actually endorsing Phillip Rivers.
Phyllis Rivers.
I don't know how to respond to that other than I'm going to have to actually agree here. Since I was ready to give Dak kind of a mulligan for this past week, I guess at week 10, but then we saw the same thing. 2 weeks in a row, I'm just not optimistic that all of a sudden they're going to fix their problems, because the problems all start up with that offensive line, which is, again, still in shambles with the injury. So, I'm steering clear of Dak.
What about Andy Dalton? He's facing Cleveland at home. Last time he faced Cleveland, 286 and 4 touchdowns. Was he a guy that you consider over Dak Prescott, Damian?
Yeah. It's closer than it is. I mean, Rivers isn't that far ahead of them, but I'd probably have it Rivers, Dalton, Dak.
And throw Eli in there for me against Washington.
No, get Eli away from me.
Ron, would you start?
I just want to say one thing, Kyle. This is where you shouldn't get too cute. You talked about it before. To me, I mean, I know you're an Andy Dalton guy, but and it's a great matchup on paper, but it doesn't always work out, like we think it will. I'm still going to go Dak over Dalton, and I'm going Dalton over Eli. So, and Rivers being the top guy out of that list, but I still think that Dak still gives you that somewhat safe floor because of his capability to run one in, even if he throws a pick or two picks, maybe he'll throw one score to Dez or Witten and maybe rush for another. So I think the floor is a little safer because he's going to be asked to do a little bit more with Zeke out and the injuries and all that stuff. So, but it's close.
Yeah, I'd take Dalton. I'd take Rivers. Eli's probably a bridge too far. If Sterling Shepard plays, then maybe a little more interested, but we'll see.
He hasn't practiced.
Yeah, he hasn't practiced, and with this game being on Thursday, it's hard for me to pull that trigger. Damian, let's talk about Chargers playmakers. Obviously, Keenan Allen was awesome. Austin Eckler's mixed in a little bit. Which pieces are you most interested in for this matchup against Dallas?
You're starting Allen, you're starting Gordon, and that's pretty much it. Eckler, he's nice, but I mean, all 6 of his carries came in the fourth quarter when they were up 30 points last week. So I'm not buying that. Hunter Henry's not a thing anymore. Antonio Gates is dead. There's no consistent second receiver. Mike Williams did. He set season highs in snaps, targets, receptions, and yards last week. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. I definitely wouldn't start him yet, but I think it's worth taking a flyer on if 2-3 weeks from now he's becoming a guy who's seeing 6-7 targets a week. So that's pretty much all I have to say on the Chargers.
Is he a guy that maybe you're stashing at the back end of your bench if you have some random guy that you've been holding on to too long for a possible stretch run?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how you should view him right now.
Ron, are you in agreement? Melvin Gordon, Keenan Allen, Phil Rivers, and kind of avoid everyone else?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, pretty much all you guys, everything you said. I maybe in DFS, Eckler and Mike Williams might be decent, shots in the dark. Yeah. Outside of those guys that you mentioned, you can't trust anyone.
If you're in deep enough league or you're desperate at running back, I don't hate Eckler, but I'm looking for better options if I can do it. Let's talk about the final game on Sunday. The aforementioned Eli Manning-led New York Giants traveling to D.C. to take on Washington. Damian, I guess from the Redskins' perspective, Kirk Cousins is a must-play. No Chris Thompson. Are we all in on P. Ryan?
Well, you never want to go all in on P. Ryan because it is P. Ryan. You want to go like halfway in on P. Ryan. But I think the encouraging thing here for him, maybe not for the offense as a whole, is that they don't really have a replacement for Thompson. The closest thing is Byron Marshall, who they signed last week. He saw 1 carry and 3 snaps, I believe, after the Thompson injury. He did play a lot of receiver in college. The Eagles kind of used him all over the place, but I don't think all of a sudden he's seeing the same workload as Thompson. And I don't know who they're going to bring in. They're saying they might promote LaShawn Daniels from the practice squad, but he's not a pass catcher. I think he only caught 10 passes in his entire 4-year career at Iowa, so he's definitely not going to be in that role. So it looks like it's going to be a lot more Jamison Crowder underneath.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah,
you think Crowder sees more consistent targets kind of the rest of the way with Thompson out?
Yeah, it's already been happening the last 2 weeks. I mean, prior to this week, he had 24 in the last 2 games, and then we'll see. I know they were playing Dotson and Harris kind of in their 3 receiver sets. Pryor's out for the year now, so we'll see. But I think it's just from the Redskins' perspective. I think Cousins is still a back end QB1. You're going to want to play the tight end here. So if it's Reed and he plays, I'm fine playing him. If he's out, then Vernon Davis is a must play. And then Crowder's really the only receiver I feel good about. We'll see with Dotson. I mean, they're giving him chances, but he's not really getting any separation. There's just a bunch of jump balls, which you don't feel great about. That being a consistent source. And I think because of what we talked about with there not being a clear replacement for Thompson, Purine's probably going to see 20-plus touches. And anybody that's saying that type of workload is a must-play at this point in the season.
Yeah. Josh Doxson's currently leading the league in almost touchdowns. There were so many that were almost there. Damian, if Reed plays, is Vernon Davis still interesting, especially with the lack of Chris Thompson?
No, I mean, I think he'll probably play more than you would expect from a second tight end, but I even, with how bad the Giants are against the position, I can't, because my thinking is if they're going to play Reed, he's got to be, either close to 100%. There's no point in throwing him out there if they don't think he's going to be able to hold up, which means he's going to see targets. And, again, it's one or the other. I don't think it's going to be.
Let's just. I want to say they don't need Reed to beat the Giants. The Giants are putrid. I actually
Did you see the Giants last week? They beat Kansas City. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, an outlier. I'm not buying it. It's too fluky. But I actually do think this could be a Josh Doxson game, and I'm definitely with Damian on Crowder. He's been a guy that I was kind of looking to kind of acquire a few weeks back, because I felt like he was going to. He was going to get some opportunities, and obviously with Pryor out now, Damian brought up that, and with the Reed injury, so there's definitely targets to go around between Crowder and Doxson, and now with Thompson gone too, so P. Ryan's good for like maybe 1 or 2 targets a game out of the backfield. That's pretty much it. So I feel like the targets are going to be there. Cousins, you got to trust him in this matchup, so I think I can trust Doxson somewhat. And maybe those almost touchdowns, Kyle, turn into real-life touchdowns this week. Maybe he gets a couple. So I think you start both those guys, in my opinion. And Crowder, obviously, is the plus play in PPR leagues.
Ron, let's talk about it from the other side and talk about those New York Football Giants. I know you guys aren't as optimistic on Eli. I think he's fine if you need a quarterback. Some other guys that I'd rather have. But Shepard is probably a guy that's not going to play, so be wary of him. Ron, my boy Orleans Darkwa, he just continues to sort of produce as a running back. 16, 14, and 20 carries, over 70 yards each of those weeks. He found the end zone last week. This is a Redskins team that isn't great versus the run. Obviously, New Orleans put up a big number on him last week. It's kind of adjusted their rank in terms of fantasy points allowed. But, we talked about the running back position being bleak. I think Orleans Dark was a guy that if you need a running back, you should be turning to.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely wasn't buying him a few weeks ago when we kind of initially started talking about him. He kind of burst on the scene. I think the problem was that backfield was just such a mess and just a quagmire that we couldn't really put a finger on who was going to be. I mean, it was a full-blown running back by committee. It definitely a situation where if one guy could kind of rise to the top, I mean, kind of like Seattle, where we still haven't seen that guy rise to the top yet. And Dark was done it. So, I mean, I can't argue the fact that he's been producing. Do I fully trust him? No, I still don't fully trust him. But again, given the running back landscape and all the injuries, there's probably a lot, worse options you could have than throwing Darkwa out there on Thanksgiving Day and hoping for him to continue to produce like he has been.
Yeah, and we all expect Evan Ingram to bounce back in this spot.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
All right. All right, guys. This was a lot of fun. It's good we chewed the Thanksgiving Day fat, as they say. Enjoy your turkey. Enjoy some pie. Tweet Ron pictures of pumpkin pie and tell him how terrible it is. We have another show that will be in your queue very shortly for the Sunday slate, so make sure you check that out. For Ron the Mad Dog McCleese, for Damian Dabrowski, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk to you guys next time.